feel like I really want to get like involved in the community and start doing like? Did you start planning things like Riz before, since you were in high school, or you're like, best meet up in high school?
You know what's crazy?
Yeah.
So I came here in grade 8, and it's around that time where like the risk guys, they actually used to live in my neighborhood. I always kind of just wanted to help out and stuff. So what ended up happening was we had this local halaqa that would happen.
Yeah.
And I would just put my hand up to help out here and there. Next thing you know, when I went into high school, that's when an MSA had been started. And I just kind of got involved, and it always just felt good to be involved, because you feel like you're doing something, you're a part of something, you have a place you can belong. And since then, it's just been RIS and MSA.
Nice.
What was the first risk? 2007?
The first RIS was 2000. So it must have been 2006.
2006.
2006, but there was one more RIS before that, which people don't even know about.
Okay.
A
So that, I'm
secret risk.
assuming that one was not at the Metro Convention Center. The one before.
No, so the I guess the unofficial first RIS was planned together, where all those organizers, they said, okay, we want to do something. And what ended up happening was it was really short notice, and they had some like UFT location booked. And I think the turnout ended up being crazy, where like it was just overflowing, and it was a logistical nightmare.
Right.
So I think once they saw the response from there, no, sorry guys, the whole point of RIS was a response to 9/11. So the first one happened in 2001.
Now that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
exactly.
I'm trying to think back on when because I went to the first RIS.
I went to the second
I went
RIS.
to the
MTCC North.
MTCC North. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I went there. I remember that was the so that was a pivotal point in my life, just because my high school, there's not that many Muslims. So I remember being in school when that happened. I was hearing people were saying like it's World War III starting and all this other stuff. And
when 9/11 happened.
When 9/11 happened. And when you're in a school by yourself and you're very much visibly a Muslim and very much visibly the only Muslim, you're the only, like, well, not only, but like one of 6 in the entire school. And so what happens is that you, at the time, it gets a little scary, because you already know as a kid that it seems natural that someone might blame you for that, what's happening over there. And so already it was a thing of like being uneasy. And back then you don't really know what's the reaction to it. How you as a Muslim are supposed to think about what's happening. You can look to your parents, or you can look to a khutbah. But back then, again, khutbahs have come a long way since when I was in high school. Like, they because the khutbahs were supposed to be current events. It was supposed to be a thing where it's like, okay, this happened this week. Let's talk about it. These are the ramifications of it. This is what the Prophet ﷺ say. This is what Allah says. So then people can kind of understand how they're supposed to react to it in an Islamic way. That's what it was supposed to do. But most of the time you show up over there and they're telling you how your sister should be wearing hijab. So now you're trying to figure out, how are you supposed to think about it? How are you supposed to react to it? And, nowadays you can go on Facebook, you pick your scholar, and then, Yasser Qadi said something, Said Shakir said something. You kind of take that, you formulate, and you're like, okay, I understand what it is, and then you make your own decisions based on that. Back then you didn't have that.
Yeah.
So when they had RIS, when RIS was happening, this was a time in my life where my parents, especially my dad, was like, every fundraising dinner, we're going. Let's show, like, everywhere. I've had so much crap biryani growing up from fundraising dinners as a result. But anyway, Riz happened, and this was like the first time where it felt like it was big. I don't know if it was just because of the high ceiling, because ISNA used to have conferences too, but it was all low ceilings, and it didn't seem like it was that grand. But when we were there at the North Convention Center, it was big, it was bright, and we got access to speakers that we never really got access to before. And one of them was Zaid Shakir. And I didn't have a beard back then, didn't grow a beard. And I remember what he was saying was that, men, you still want your women, like your wife or your daughters or whatnot, to wear the hijab. And they had to walk outside and be a magnet to this unwanted attention and tension, right? While you are just walking around, you don't look like a Muslim. You're not wearing a thobe. You don't have to wear a kufi. And as a result, like, why is the responsibility of being Muslim and visually being Muslim on your women, and you're not doing anything really at all, just staying quiet, or you're just doing your day to day. And so he's like, this is the reason why you should be wearing a beard. Like, you know, in like, that's the smallest thing that you could do in solidarity for Muslim women who also have to wear a hijab and stuff like that. I heard that, and, you know, my mom wears hijab. I was like, how would I feel if my mom decided to take off the hijab? Not that it's my like decision at all, but I know that I would feel a little sad of the fact that, you know, she felt like it's something that she would be scared going out for. And so like, that's where I started growing a beard. And that was the first Riz. And that was because it had such an effect on me, just the first Riz. Yeah, I went nonstop for about 8 years. I used to go to the knowledge retreats as well. We can get into that later, but like, that was my entry. So it was a really big, important
that's
part
deep.
of my life. Yeah,
that is deep.
Yeah. Zaid Chakra. I eventually got to meet him like 10 years after.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I knew he was going to be there, so I wrote a note saying that, you know, I told him that a little bit of a summary of that same story. I folded up and I gave it to him. I said, you can read it whenever.
Was this the shea butter, the Shaila
Yeah,
Kibria? Yeah. Okay, that's where I met you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. The 10-year anniversary of the first Riz is when I met you.
You guys actually met at Riz?
No, we met at this other event where he gave Zaid Shakir the paper. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That worked.
I come from Houston. We don't have anything, or I think now we do actually. But going to the Metro Toronto Convention Center and seeing this many Muslims and nobody protesting outside coming from Texas was really like seeing Muslims this well organized. And Houston has a huge brown population, but we didn't have halal food. We couldn't just have like signs saying this stuff. So it was really cool to like come into the Metro Toronto Convention Center in a place of prestige where all these like cool things have happened in the heart of Toronto, not like hidden under three buildings, you know, like in Houston, it was like, we're going to do Tarawih under this basement, where the cars normally park, you know, like you feel like outlaws. But it was like, I felt like Riz did it really well. And of course, logistically, you know this better than I do, you know, those growing pains do exist. But like the platform and the reach, how many people were coming to these seemed enormous from the go. And I was like, how did they secure these contracts? Like, how did they sell them? Like, yeah, we're just going to have like 10,000 Muslims come in here and it's going to be okay. Right so quickly after 9/11 and stuff was the thing that like I was like, whoa, how did this happen? And how hard of a pitch was this?
Yeah, like that's what the crazy part is, right? People just walk in and they see like a grand hall and everyone's together and people are actually forming lines and, you know, walking around like, you know, things are okay.
Yeah.
There's just like an allure to that, right? To see Muslims organized and, you know, even logistically, everything is flowing properly. It's nice to see Muslims do something like that at a high professional level.
And the cool imams that you would see on the internet were there.
Yeah.
There was rumors that Imran Khan was going to be there.
He was there.
He was there?
He was
See,
there.
that's like a Pakistani cricket legend that became a politician.
I saw when he walked in.
And it like
people were standing on chairs.
Yeah, Pakistanis were freaking out, even though he's like he shouldn't be at Riz, but like people were like, "It's Imran Khan."
Yeah.
And that's the year Riz was actually at Skydome, and I have one of my most fondest memories because so I was in high school back then, and we had this like I think 2 days before the event. You know, all the volunteers get together. Yeah. You're walking around the Skydome, and you're in your teams, and it's just so grand, right? And we're getting all our instructions, and then, you know, eventually when the convention starts, it's so hype. And I remember when Imran Khan was about to come out, literally all the volunteer teams were lined up at different gates. No one knew where he would come out from because he had his own personal bodyguards. It was so hype.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever like how much interaction do you, if any, get to like some of the speakers and stuff?
So in my case,
and can you tell us some diva stories? You don't have to name anybody.
Yeah. Just like I want to know if someone's got like a writer.
Like Sheikh Idris insists on shawarma all the time, and he wants fries in there. And if there's no fries in there, he throws it against the wall, and he goes nam. I'm sure he doesn't go nam, but
yes, he says no.
Anyways, but any diva stories?
I don't know about the diva stories, but what I can tell you though is that. As a high school volunteer at the time, you know, I'd done a couple years at Riz. I did also have my moment of fame on the stage as a background singer for Sami Yusuf.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's where I met some of the other Mac guys as well.
That's pretty cool.
And it was such a memorable experience. But
I like that.
eventually, as I got a bit more involved in it, my first 2 years, I actually did hospitality for RAS. And the hospitality team is just, their job is to make sure all the speakers, all the people who come to it, they're comfortable. And literally my job was to, just follow whatever sheikh has been assigned to me.
Yeah.
Make sure that, I take care of their coat. I don't like stir up any controversies, and I just make sure that they're comfortable.
Don't look them in the eyes. Don't look them in the eyes.
Nothing like that. Nothing like that. Okay. Make sure that they don't get lost. Bring them back to their hospitality room.
It's like your shepherd.
And it's a lot more tamer than I thought.
Pretty much. It was just like
you got
making sure.
king with a hook. It's like, no sheikh.
No sheikh. No. Just don't need that.
Following them around, walking them back to the hospitality room, and making sure they're well fed, well taken care of. Any requests that they have.
Okay, you're giving us a vanilla answer. I understand why, but at the same time,
did any of them try to hit you at any point?
Well, the funny thing is that, what I'm trying to tell you is, being at such a close level of interaction with them, you kind of get to see how humble they are, right? Like on stage, some of the on stage, I'm not gonna name names, but. In person, they might be really quiet, and it's kind of like, I don't even know what to say to them, right? Like, this is this XY sheikh, but then they go up on stage and they just come alive, right? So it's interesting to see two sides to them in a certain way as well. But do
you have a Starbucks order? You see what we're trying to get at. I'm still trying to
I think they seem like nice people. I was hoping they'd be messed up. But
hey, listen. So I'm a coffee guy. If I was a sheikh, I would definitely say, I want 2 shots of espresso on ice, right? And the cool thing about RIS and their hospitality team is we go out of our way to make sure everyone's comfortable. Right. So if I was one of those guys, I would definitely say, hey, is it possible for me to get my dose of coffee? So the goal is to make them comfortable and make them feel at home, and we try to do that.
And what roles have you had at RIS since then?
So I did hospitality. So as nice as it was for me, ending of high school, beginning of university, I used to feel like, hey, there's so much more I can be doing. Yeah. So I eventually got more involved with the logistics side. So within logistics, I was doing a lot of training for the volunteers, and then eventually on-site events. And honestly, that was definitely my favorite part, because
it's a huge team too.
You onboard around 400 to 600 volunteers, and they go through a month-long training program. Arranging that training for them on weekends when a lot of university students have exams as well. Wow. It's not easy, but you bring them in, and then you kind of teach them a lot of the tarbiyah related skills and just general
for those people who don't know what tarbiyah means.
Tarbiyah, so just in general,
manners,
how to behave and how to have good manners, like you said. Conflict resolution issues, because at the end of the day, these volunteers from high school, most of them are from high school, they're your front line, right? People coming in, and Muslims, they have all kinds of issues, and we can get into that. But
the biggest thing would be trying to kick out men from the sisters section and stuff like that too. I had one volunteer tell me this guy won't leave the sisters section. It was really funny because they eventually had to get him to move, but he wouldn't. He was like, "This is the best seat. I can see everything from here."
People get riled up for their seats, and
the jacket leaving.
The jacket leaving. The jacket.
That must be a nightmare for anyone who's assigned to the first 15 rows.
They tarp it they just coat, and you're like, what the heck?
So what ends up happening is the volunteers, they have to first tackle the issue, and then if uncle whatever or auntie whatever is making it hard for them, then eventually it gets escalated to someone and all the way up to security, right? And you don't want to have to do that. No one enjoys kicking people out of their seats, right? Why can't people just follow the rules?
I know. Trust me about it. But brown
people, why is that so hard?
Yeah.
So some people show up and they're like, "This is it. We're not moving, and if we do, it's just going to the washroom. They're going to come back." That's it's very hard to hold on to the seat. That's not the problem.
No,
I don't think that's the problem. See, I think the main problem is the washroom river.
Yeah.
The washroom river.
I don't know how the sisters is, but the guys' restroom, you're going to have to roll up your bottom of your jeans so they don't get wet sometimes. There's always a Filipino guy there with a mop just looking I'm just so tired. I'm just so tired.
I mean, we've been, all of a sudden I'm part of Riz. We've been at Riz at Metro Convention Center for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So you've I'm sure developed relationships with like the AV guys because they had to come out every year. I don't know if there's always new guys who were coming out every year with like the camera guys, the crane dude. Also, the first Muslim event ever to have a crane. I think.
Is
right?
that true? Okay.
I think it might be.
I think so.
minus
Why
like
not?
weddings and stuff like that. But like that was the first conference I've ever been to in Canada. That had like a swaying crane. So it was always like kinetic
And the
energy.
backdrop.
What did that feel like though the first time you saw that?
Oh, I was like, this is something I could be proud saying that I came here for this.
It's like a status symbol
for
you.
sure.
I went to a Muslim
sure.
event. We have cranes now. People don't think we have cranes, brother. We have cranes.
It definitely made it's every little bit. I want to go back to the washroom thing, but every little bit of Riz that made it slick. The stage design, the lighting,
Mostly the backdrop in this.
Yeah,
Dude,
for real.
Every recent bride, super jealous looking at that backdrop. Like, I should have gotten that. I cheaped out.
So
that
it's like with
backdrop.
like Metalworks or whatever that company that you guys use. So that was nice. The podium, when they like, it almost looked like they designed it just for this year.
Yeah.
All of those small things, and then obviously because I'm like a nerd and a tech guy, like I would like to sit close to the AV guys, like on the right hand side where they're doing like the mic stuff and the light things and whatnot. It was always cool because you can see like all of the stuff that's involved with them being able to put in like a good, I don't want to say it was a show, but like a good program. Mm-hmm. And like you guys eventually graduated to like live streaming it as well. So like in that lies a whole different level of like complications in like all of the stuff. That's what made it cool. Whereas it was like the only place, at least that I knew of, that was doing all of those things. So that's cool. But back to sorry, go ahead.
Well, actually, what I want to bring up with that is since you're a nerd, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you would also have an appreciation for the fact that every year there's a lot of time spent on the actual production value of RIS, right? So, for example, you look at the postcards or the flyers that come out every year. It is incredibly hard to top it every year. And I would say for the most part, the team that does it, they've done an incredible job of doing so.
Right.
So like this year, I didn't have a chance to bring it by with me, but our cards actually have like gold plated layers on them. So for someone who has that keen eye, you can actually pick up on those type of things, right? That's why like even when the trailer comes out, which it came out, I think, yesterday. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it.
They're awesome, though.
The trailers are awesome. It's
They're
like
so
watching
intense.
Transformers, right?
Yeah,
But
it feels like planets are about to collide. That's what every trailer feels like.
Planets of Iman, brother.
Yeah.
But like my point is that for people who have that keen eye, actually like try to look at what's going on, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of abstract, thematic type things going on. And you know what? Take a look at it and we can talk about it after.
All right, we will. Okay, question. Has there ever been an AV guy or any like person that's worked at MTCC that has converted to Islam as a result of like?
I always wondered that. I was like,
I don't know
We
because
should ask.
so me personally,
I'm asking.
I don't work with the AV team as much,
Right.
But
Or not just the AV team, like even a janitor or the cleaners or the people, the security guards or anyone, because but I say AV simply because they got to sit there and listen to every single lecture, so they are consuming.
So in my case, like my closest experience has been with the actual security guys who, like stand right by the stage, and they're making sure that no one rushes the speaker.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, I check up with them. You're on the walkie-talkie with them, so they're listening to everything. And there was this really nice lady at the end of the convention. She actually came up to me, and I think it was Sheikh Hamza, where she said that, what, I really like this man. Is there any chance that I can get a copy of this lecture? Right. So then what ends up happening is you got to find a way to get her that CD. You obviously don't want her to pay for it.
Right.
So you got to get that CD, and you also got to make sure that nobody else gets rushed because we're about to wrap up the whole program, right?
Mm-hmm. Also, Hamza copyrights his stuff, so that may be tough to get.
Yeah.
You got to move some mountains, but that's dawah. You got to do it now.
That's right. Like the whole point of this is to whoever comes, you have to make sure they're welcome and you leave with a good feel, right? With a good vibe. And if it's happening with a non-Muslim, then you have to go the extra mile for sure, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And what's your current capacity with Riz? What are you up to now?
My current capacity, honestly, it changes on a year-to-year basis. Like, to give you some background, right? Everyone who's involved is someone with a full-time job. Most of us have, a family, we're married, we have kids, and a lot of like the people who were involved from the beginning, I really look up to them because I don't know how every year they find a way to come back and take on this full-time commitment, right? So for me, like, there have been years where I've had to step out because personal issues going on, or there's someone sick in the family, or hey, Hajj happens during risk time too, right? Some years you play it out, some years you don't. But in my case, like, I've always loved to be a part of the marketing efforts and just in terms of volunteer management and event day logistics. So this year, let's see what happens.
So I think what Sid was trying to drive at is how many people show up every year, or what are we at right now? What's the in my mind, I like to think, because I love Riz so much, it's a linear thing. Every year we're beating it by 10,000.
Like, what's the goal? Because at this point, I feel like it's at like, it can't get any bigger in terms of capacity.
It can't, because there have been years when Riz has sold out, and
You guys had one year where like there were fake wristbands and stuff.
oh yeah, let's not get into that.
No?
But,
Okay.
well, we can get into that. I to be honest, I don't know
even
what
know
happened.
All I know is Tarek Swaydan was on, and he was like, all right, I'll cover an entire box because they lost like a box of wristbands or something.
I think what happened was that a box of wristbands were stolen, and then they were circulated outside in the parking lot. And to be honest, I still don't know what happened to its full extent, but it was not a fun moment.
I can imagine.
I think the good thing was, though, that the community and the speakers, everyone kind of came together to make sure that risk would happen the following year, and alhamdulillah it did.
Because it does seem like it starts from such a warm place. It is a community event. It's not like these people who invest money in it that maybe won't do it next year or something. Like, people invest their hard-earned time, money, and everything in it, and it's for everybody. So it feels like every year people get together and make it happen. Like, what are some of the challenges you guys have seen over the years?
Honestly, like, the biggest challenge probably I would say ends up being like having the drive to come back and put all the effort in to make sure that you're hitting the next level, right? We've been doing this for 15 years, 16th year coming up. How do you basically like make it better every single year, right? There are people out there, even within my friends, who say that, I've been to risk, been there, done that. It's kind of getting redundant. But the goal is to make sure, or try to get those people to come out again, so that they can kind of connect with the community and feel inspired to do that again, right? So it's, the same group of organizers that constantly are speaking to the shiuch and trying to come up with ways to make the program more interesting, or bring on new speakers to the platform.
Yeah.
So, for example, we've started doing Q&A sessions, right? There are breakout sessions where the public can actually come and ask questions and get answers. We've also had like our whole trying to bring up new talent. We have, at the bazaar, you have a small booth where people showcase their talents.
Oh yeah, talent show. I remember that.
Right. So like, a lot of things have to come together, but at the end of the day, you still need to have that drive and will to constantly renew your intentions and be able to kind of just say, how can we make it more epic this year, right?
Yeah, and you guys have tried like different. You guys had I remember you guys had comics one year. There's like a bunch of comics that were really funny. You guys had musicians.
Yeah, you guys were big on like the Sunday night concert.
Yeah,
that was a thing. I don't think you guys do that anymore, right? I'm one of those people who kind of fell off of Riz, unfortunately. Yeah. So let's you're putting in the work now.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we've tried a lot of things, right? So
had Trudeau come out when he wasn't prime minister.
That's right.
That was a big deal, dude.
That's right.
That was really cool.
Like a lot of thought goes into every single program item on the agenda. Like, even this upcoming year, there are so many speakers lined up. Like, it's literally to the point of where the program team has to say, how much time can we give each of them, right? It's like a 10-minute shout out. And keep in mind, like, the people that are coming, these speakers, these sheikhs, they're like world renowned. So you also have to give them enough time to come up and speak about whatever they're speaking about. So like, it's definitely a challenge, but you have to kind of find a way to make them collaborate and come up and give their best talk that they ever can.
That's awesome, man.
So moving forward, obviously, because in an effort to consistently outdo Riz of last year, you want to make it different, you want to make it better, you want to do you feel like for example in this year there's been something that it shows Riz's communication or willingness to communicate with the actual community that comes to Riz, right? Because inevitably there's going to be different levels of how do we say, controversy,
right.
and then Riz as a whole would have to somehow navigate through that. So what we've seen this year that's a little bit different was that there seemed to be a more concrete two-way communication between the community and Riz. Is that has that been something that you guys have been developing over time, or has it been just because of the fact that you guys have been dealing with some particular topics that have been a little tougher, and as a result that pathway has opened up?
To be honest, that's hard for me to say. It's just one of those things where whoever kind of, I guess you see come up on the podium, right?
Mm-hmm.
What Riz wants to do is give people a platform to come up and speak, right? When these controversies come up about, hey, I don't agree with, this speaker or that sheikh, at the end of the day, the whole goal is to be able to provide a platform where different ideas can come together and people can kind of say whatever they have to say, right? It's not RIS exactly endorsing that idea. So if you don't like someone who's speaking up there, hey, just show some respect, show some etiquette, and you can step out of the hall, right? So coming to your point about having that two-way communication, right? At the end of the day, RIS is a community event. So obviously you want to make sure that the community is part or feels like it's part of putting together this event, right? I live in Toronto, you live in Mississauga. We are the people that make up, the Canadian Muslims that come out to this event, right? So you obviously want to make sure that everyone is heard.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, I think it's good. But I also think that on the other hand, Riz's effort to consistently try to bring new ideas for it to be at least to start a conversation is something that's important as well. I feel like sometimes that also is something that's uncomfortable. So trying to navigate between those two things and make the best decisions will be increasingly difficult as time goes on, because people.
I noticed that there was word out that Riz invited Jordan Peterson, and then there was me and my brother and my family were actually talking about it, and we noticed that there were a lot of people that had mixed feelings about having somebody come on that isn't necessarily Muslim. They're like, what's his place there? Not that they even disagreed with his message, but people came out and now he's not speaking anymore. And it's that weird thing you also want to have new conversations, include people, but also understand, people are going to have limits to what kind of conversations they want to have at what point. Some people come to Riz for a spiritual experience and that's it. But there's also validity in having, Muslim musicians and comics and maybe things that are more thought-provoking and different. And it must be really tough for organizers to kind of decide, what do we want people to think Riz of? What's our thing? Are we going to be there to kind of push certain boundaries, start new conversations, or are we going to be, just focused on reviving the Islamic spirit?
Right. I think the one thing that I liked about Riz was not just because, sorry, brother, is not just because of, just more to say its point before I let you talk, is that there's also the conference aspect, but there was also the retreat. And the thing is that sometimes you can have conversations specifically in the retreat, whereas you wouldn't be able to have, or it's not conducive for you to have it in front of 40,000 people, So, I mean, those things as well, I think is important too. But go on.
No, I think you guys capture a lot of the points, right? At the end of the day, when you're having a conference where 20,000 people come out for a weekend, the Christmas weekend, right?
Yeah.
If you want to call it that.
It does feel that way. People,
it does, right?
I have relatives that will let me know from New York and Buffalo, that weekend I'm staying at your place because they're coming over for Riz. People do this. So.
Well, it's funny because at work, people ask me, what are you doing for Christmas? I say, I'm doing Christmas.
Yeah.
Right? But the whole point is that you have 20,000 people coming out.
Yeah.
And we want to, we just want to make sure that it's a place where everyone feels safe. A place where, young and old have a place where they can relate to and find that common ground.
Yeah.
Right? As Muslims, we all have our differences, but what you want to do is promote that that respect for each other, right? Like, how are you going to gain respect if you're not respecting the people around you, right? And then beyond that, you want to promote introspection, right? Of course. That's what it comes down to, right? Controversies or not, like, if I think as people of this community, if we just kind of learn to say, okay, let's not judge, what person X or person Y is doing, and let's try to see from their perspective, and it's up to us to decide whether you agree or not with them, right? And if you disagree, you can walk away. No one's holding you hostage,
right?
And then coming to the retreat, obviously, like, the retreat is for people who want to kind of engage a little bit more on the knowledge acquisition side. So, like, spending a week with a fewer set of scholars, taking on a more depth approach to learning. So obviously it's for like two different crowds, right?
Right.
Yeah. I will say this though, one of the coolest thing about Riz, and I can feel this way from the very beginning, is that just having a Muslim conference at one point was controversial. And through it all, every Riz I go to, I'm not saying I love it because I meet all my friends, or the food is great. It's like I feel like a better person. I try to carry that momentum. Like, I revisit Riz every week after Riz is over, and there's controversies, and Tariq Ramadan's gonna have different opinions than this guy, and this guy's gonna have different opinions than that guy. But every year I leave with a spiritual high, and I look forward to Christmas now because Riz is gonna happen. So it's like, it's a part of it, I guess. You're gonna be exposed to different thoughts within Islam, and maybe certain thoughts outside of Islam. But I feel like Riz is a success as long as you're hitting these peaks intellectually and religiously. It's like, it's one of the best things this year or every year I've been to. So
I think it's important to be uncomfortable. I think there's something to be said to be uncomfortable. I remember the first time, not the first time, but like I was there a couple of years ago, or a few years ago now, and they had someone on from an author that was Pornified USA, and it was like the first time that they were going to talk about pornography and the effect of pornography in front of all of these uncles and aunties. And the thing is that like, it was, I mean, like, for some people it was already too freaking late, because like I have friends who work as social workers, and they already know the deep effect of pornography on the Muslim community, as on marriages, on relationships, and all this other stuff. And like, so I mean, even then, when they were talking about it, when Riz was talking about it, it was already late. But never late. It's better be late than never. And they, as best as they could, I felt like it would have been better if we had someone that I wasn't happy with the way Hamza Yusuf was talking about it, but the thing is that at the very least it was brought up, and I can't imagine you guys, like, the reaction to it was like, yeah, perfect, we're okay about talking about this stuff. Like, I'm assuming there was a fair hundreds of people who were not happy with that topic even being broached on like that main stage. But that was important, and that's uncomfortable. No one wants to hear about that. But for the most part, especially like our older generation, they don't even want to know that it exists, and they don't want to say it, and they don't even think that their kids are watching it on their like iPads or whatever. But that was important to do. Yeah. And despite the fact that people were unhappy about it, I still think that like I commended them for doing that. Yeah. And I hope that Rizq will continuously do that.
That's the strangest thing, the most impressive thing is that you have those people that you mentioned, like uncles and aunties, and then you also have like a huge group of like young people that are high school and like barely about to start university.
Yeah. Who are going to be facing those things.
And they're already not those, well, yes, those things as well, but it's like Rizq is catering and giving like to all of these people.
Yeah, that's true.
And something's going to be controversial to some, like everybody at some point, right? Yeah, like there was a guy who was talking about manners one year, and he was talking about manners literally like when you go to somebody's house, please call them and let them you're coming. You show up uninvited. I know it. And there were people upset about that. There was like, where I was, he's like, you have to tell people before coming. Now this is like there was one guy losing his mind on that, let alone the actual heavy stuff. But when you have 10,000 people in a room, it's going to be different sensitivities.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? Like, it's like you said, controversies, they also play a role in keeping everyone honest, right? So if you're, hopefully, like, it's a sign that you're doing something right? Where when people speak up, it's because they care, right? So when issues come up, obviously, like sometimes people don't know what's going on behind the scenes, or they're judging or whatever it is. But at least when people are voicing their issues, then you know that they care, and it gives you a reason to at least reflect back and keep yourself honest.
Right.
Oh, mashallah. No, that's really cool. I one thing I did want to go back to, and this was going back to the hospitality thing, is that do sheikhs have groupies? And I don't mean like halal groupies, like just guys and like older women trying to get their autograph and ask them one question and that kind of stuff, like people trying to get backstage.
All the time.
All the
like there
time?
are always people who line up and they just want to like somehow like just shake your hand or
Yeah.
give the sheikh a peck on the cheek or something like that, right? I don't know if you guys saw the year when this was the first time at MTCC South when Ustad Amr Khalid came.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
Do you guys remember what
And
happened?
ammonium. You tell it.
People just rushed him, right? I thought that was it. I was way back.
So this was, I think, maybe third or fourth year of RIS, right? So the organization was growing. We were still we had a solid volunteer base, but there still weren't enough volunteers.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, Ustad Amr Khalid, he's like, very, very well respected rock star type status coming all the way from Egypt. And, all the entire Arabian audience just wanted a piece of him.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, from a logistical point of view, we're telling him, okay, Sheikh, like, once you're done your lecture, here's the backstage exit. You can just go from here and, we can get you back to your hotel.
Oh, he didn't
But
do that, eh?
he loves the people.
Right.
And he said, you know what? I want to go through there. I want to meet the people. These people, they love me. And man, you should have seen the circus that happened when he came into when he took the main exit outside the main hall. There were literally like... everyone's hoarding over him.
Right.
So all the organizers and volunteers, they had to make like a human chain around him. And they're still like aunties and grandmas just trying to jump all over us, just trying to like let him know how much they love him and everything, right? So at that point in time, you're like, oh man, we definitely need a lot more help over here, right? But that also kind of goes to show you that even with the speakers and the scholars, they all have their own personalities, and some of them they're more introverted, whereas others they just want to go out there and be with the people.
Rockstar Maulana. He's like, I'm gonna stage dive. Carry me, brother. That would be cool though.
All right, something completely not related to any of this stuff, but also a problem if you're going to RIS. So RIS is 4 days, generally speaking. You don't want to be spotted wearing the same stuff 4 days in a row.
True.
You got to like break it up. And that was an issue, specifically when I was younger. You got to plan it out. Did you have to plan it out as a thing,
You
or
mean
you
for
just didn't
clothes?
care?
Like, is this a problem? I didn't realize this was a problem for people to plan
Not only
out
that,
their-
if I was part of I was doing the conference, and I was also doing the retreat.
So the retreat definitely makes it harder.
It makes
you
it
have
harder
to
because
think about it a lot longer, right?
Yeah, and it's a closer
You
knit.
just
of
put
a
on
thing.
different hoodies. I don't understand. Like, what do
You don't wear hoodies. Wait, how did you go to
It's
RIS?
cold. You just wear different jackets.
When I was going to RIS back in the day, everyone was decked out.
Uh-huh.
Oh, everyone was wearing good
Okay,
clothes.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, you did.
I was wearing clothes. I was wearing normal, like a sweater and a t-shirt.
No, man, you had to like.
You had different beads. You're like, I got my dark beads tonight, baby.
That
You
was
didn't
the
think I
thing.
was gonna make
It was
fun of
literally
this?
On two completely different lines
There
of
was
the
a-
spectrum
there
over
was
here,
a
right?
huge thing over this. I remember like when it eventually got to a point where like when Riz was coming around again the next year, they would be posted on Facebook. We'd be like, all right, what do we gotta figure out what to wear? Can't we
What
wear
did
the
you
same
do,
thing?
man? I might be missing out on this. Shoot.
Or you
I
just
don't
wear
know,
a
man,
suit
like,
because
for-
you're a volunteer, so like, it's like
Yeah,
almost
s-
uniform level.
Yeah, like I think like for a guy, it's still a bit easier when
It's
you
still
can put
easier,
on a
yeah,
suit,
without a
right?
doubt.
Like
Yeah.
just like change up the tie, change the shirt,
Right.
and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Maybe on the first Jummah, you put on something traditional because you're praying Jummah. Got the thobe, maybe like get some headgear going on.
Uh-oh.
But the Saturday and the Sunday, you probably tone it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Some
Oh,
people,
so-
not Yasin.
What about
though.
you,
Not me,
Yasin?
not me. There was thought involved in all of that.
Well, let's
Especially
hear
for,
it,
like,
man.
Oh no, I'm just saying, like 2 months before Riz, there was a fair bit of going to Mex or the chateau.
I wish I had that time to actually think that through.
Oh, this guy's he's trying to make it look like I had nothing to do except just going out.
I'm like, I've moved over here now. I'm with this guy. I'm like,
I know I'm not. I wasn't the only one.
No, I'm sure you weren't.
Yeah.
There was one other
Plus,
guy.
the thing is that inevitably this is what happens. Whether or not this is obviously like eventually you figure out that this is not the best way for you to be able to go look for a spouse. But the problem is that
But people do.
people do,
People
right?
do.
People show up, and there's a lot of like cross glances across the lobbies and things like that, trying to like
Just quick
make
glances,
things
lower your gaze.
Yeah,
Hopefully
right.
she'll be there later, which she won't be.
No, because it's like 20,000 people. It's very difficult. But at the same time, there's a fair bit of that. I know that for sure.
I still have not been able to figure this one out. Like, I remember I don't know, I had been assigned to do something. I was literally just racing down the hallway to get to the speaker room.
Right.
And this older uncle just stops me point blank.
Right.
And he says, "Brother, can I have a minute of your time?" And I'm saying, "What's up?"
Right.
And he gives
Here's
me
my
this
daughter.
he gives me this postcard and he's saying, "Are you interested in marrying?
Oh wow.
Please call me at this number." Like,
Wow.
it's just like,
So he didn't say it. The postcard
yeah,
did.
the postcard
Wow.
says it, right? And I'm like,
So you saw you
"Thank
running
brother.
like
I gotta get somewhere, right?" So like,
he's well dressed. He's clearly athletic.
Hey,
he
man.
was running.
People are looking for there's some wali's out there. They're looking for their kids and stuff.
there is an organized effort to be able to try and tackle this, though, right? Like, there
Yeah,
is
they
a
have the
matrimonial
matrimonial
session
thing,
that
yeah.
happens.
Yep.
I don't know if any of you guys have
I've seen
attended
it.
it before
I've
or,
seen it.
or seen it.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't gone either, but
Right.
It's
and
good
I-
that you guys decided, like, hey, people are going to try to
They're gonna do it
let's-
anyway, might
Let's
as well.
organize it so they're not giving us papers as we run to get things,
Creep out people as well.
yeah, like at the end of the day, people are gonna do what they want to do, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty jokes, though. I love all of it, man. I love the bazaar. I love how crowded it is. I love that there's a guy trying to sell like organic honey beside a lady selling like weird hijabs. Not even like there's normal hijabs, and then there's like newer, shinier hijabs. I just love all of it now. Where I'm like, Riz, you're gonna have like a mixed bag in this area, and then you're gonna have a great high, a spiritual high
For
in
sure.
the conference.
Yeah, no, it's always been a great thing for me. Like, also, I like the fact that it changes year over year. I like the fact that it offers different things for different people, depending on where you are in your life.
I
That's
also
good.
like that it's held at the same place as Comic-Con.
Yes,
The Fan Expo, where I'm
Expo.
like, I was here as Batman a few months ago, and now I'm here in a thobe. Like, I love how like big it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, brother. Is there anything else that you wanna do hit on just before we go?
No, I'm just gonna say December 22nd. Riss is starting once again, inshallah.
It's gonna be better than the last one.
It's gonna be better than the last one, and you know what? I am convinced it is gonna be better than the last one. This year, we have even a bigger lineup of speakers.
DeMar
The big-
DeRozan is coming.
What?
No, he's not. That'd be cool though.
Actually, I'm gonna address that too. But Maulana Tariq Jamil, he's like our biggest addition this time around.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, he's from
no.
Pakistan. He's huge in the Pakistani crowd,
Yes.
the Tablighi Jamaat group, and you know what? He brings a following of huge cricket stars with him too.
Yeah.
So
And big
keep
beards,
a-
I'm assuming. Once
keep
when I
a-
hear Tabligh,
yeah,
that's what I know them in Mauritius.
yeah. No, keep an eye out for him.
It'll be exciting. a lot of
it's-
Pakistani uncles. It's gonna be a riot. They're gonna be burping. That's what they do. They don't
And-
say excuse me.
And on that DeMar DeRozan comment, you do
Yes.
know even in the past we've had like athletes come on out, right?
I
So
didn't know.
I remember
Hakeem Olajuwon.
Hakeem
right?
Olajuwon
I didn't
has
know
come
Hakeem
out.
came out.
Yeah.
Last year we had the Hussein brothers from NFL. This year
Okay.
we also have Mahmoud Abdul Rauf coming out.
Dude, from the Nuggets from back in the day.
That's
the
right.
First guy to sit for a national anthem protest got suspended one game for it.
I see.
Yeah.
I thought
Right.
it ruined his career.
Well, his game dropped off dramatically.
I
But
see. That's
anyways,
unfortunate.
he was all right. No, he played for a long time.
Yeah.
He was just a good point guard. That's awesome, though.
Right.
He's an OG.
Yeah,
Of,
exactly. Like I was a huge fan of this guy,
Yeah.
and you know what? Kudos to him for the stance he took. But I'm really looking forward to seeing him up there.
Right.
And
I don't know how I got so excited about the roof. I was like, yeah.
so
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome,
definitely check
awesome.
it out and check out the trailer at riskconvention.com.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
All right, everyone. That is the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out with us. If you love us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Go to iTunes. Give us a little review. We would appreciate it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our vlog over there. We're pretty proud of it. Anyway, we'll be back in a week. Take care of yourselves. Good night.